About 7 or 8 years ago, my mom and I were staying at a friend's house. Actually, we were kind of living with her for a while. Everything was normal at first, but after some time, strange things started happening, especially in the room I was sleeping in. I began having the same nightmare over and over again. In these dreams, there was this pitch black figure, completely shadow-like, that would appear and keep asking me about someone named Denise. It would stand in the corners of the room, just watching me, always silent, always still. It never got close, but it was always there, just staring and asking, "Where's Denise?" I started feeling really uncomfortable in that room. I couldn't sleep properly, and the energy just fell off. Eventually, I stopped sleeping there and started sleeping next to my mom instead. One day, my mom and her friend asked me what was going on, why I didn't want to sleep in that room anymore, and what I was afraid of. So I told them about the nightmares, about the figure, and how it kept asking for someone named Denise. As soon as I said that name, my mom's friend froze. Her whole face changed. She asked me, "Wait, did you say Denise?" It was asking about Denise? I said yes, kind of confused, and then she told me something that still gives me chills to this day. Apparently, years ago, she had another friend who used to stay in that same room, and her name was, yes, you guessed it, Denise. According to her, Denise used to talk to herself constantly. She would go into the bathroom, turn on the tap, and have full conversations with the running water. They started thinking something was seriously wrong with her. Eventually, they kicked her out because of her strange and unsettling behavior. After that, I never ever slept in that room alone again. My mom even cleansed the room with vinegar and prayers, trying to get rid of whatever presence might still be lingering. Two nights ago, I was staying at my parents' place. Around 2:30 a.m., I was still awake on my phone when I heard my mom calling my name from down the hallway. It wasn't muffled or distant. It was clear, the exact tired way she usually sounds if she needs something in the middle of the night. I answered, "Yeah?" and got up to check. When I went into her room, she was completely out, lights off, deep asleep. I even shook her shoulder lightly and she didn't wake up. That's when the uneasiness kicked in. I went back to my room, shut the door, and tried to convince myself I imagined it. But then I heard it again. My name. Same exact tone, only this time it was right outside my door. I didn't answer. I just froze, staring at the crack of the light under the door. After maybe 10 seconds, I saw a shadow move past, slow, like someone was standing there waiting. I wanted to call out, but my throat felt locked. Eventually, it went silent. The next morning, I asked my mom straight up if she came to my door, and she swore she never called me once. I don't know what freaks me out more, the voice, or the fact that it knew to sound exactly like my mom. When I was 13, my family moved to a new house. It was newly built on a new settlement, so it was even stranger. There were inexplicable events. Think lights flickering, the TV turning on by itself, cold spots, unmistakable footsteps. but the clearest sign I had ever heard came when I was 16. I was at home, sick from school. Nobody else was home. It was maybe 9 a.m. I woke up to the sound of a woman's voice. The voice said, "Hello? Hello?" As it woke me up, I thought I was just hearing things, or that perhaps the voice was lingering remnants of a dream. However, a few seconds later, I heard the voice again. It was absolutely, unmistakably a woman's voice. It wasn't very loud, but distinct, as if someone was speaking somewhat forcefully on the floor below me. I figured it was my grandmother, as she was known to use that exact sequence of words, but the tone and delayed onset sounded slightly different. I called back a couple times. I didn't receive a response, so I got up and walked to the middle floor. I didn't see anyone, so I called out again. There was no response. I didn't hear or see the door open, nor the window, so I'm confident nobody left the house. I called out again, and like before, there was no response. I brushed it off and figured if it was my grandmother, she would confine me. However, the house was quiet until the rest of my family came home. I asked if somebody had come by and was assured that nobody was home. The doors had been locked all day. I called my grandma, and she said she hadn't been over either. I brushed it off, thinking I must have heard something. A couple weeks later, my dad was home alone, late Friday night. The next morning, he said something to me along the lines of, "You know how you said this house is haunted? Last night, I heard a woman's voice calling out, 'Hello?' I mean, it was very clearly a woman's voice. There was no mistaking that." I hadn't told him about what I had heard, so I have a really difficult time believing that we both made up the same experience. This was unsettling, but I was able to brush it off, until one night a couple months later. At the time, I shared a room with my brother, who is a few years younger than me. It was maybe 2 a.m. when I woke up and saw him sitting on the bed. His face looked like he was in pain, and he was panicking, rocking back and forth while holding his eyes fixed on the door. I turned to him and asked what was wrong. He didn't answer. He didn't respond. I asked again, and this time received a response. However, he did not make eye contact with me and kept staring at the door. This was the conversation. "What's wrong?" "The street." "What?" No response. "What is wrong?" "The street." "The street?" No response again. "Tell me what's wrong." "The street." And he starts laughing nervously. "What about the street?" "The street." Brother again. "Yeah, that's really funny, alright." "What?" He turns toward me, staring directly at me, and he says, "You're a goddamn idiot." He got up and left the room. My brother had really never cursed at me and never said goddamn. He also never sleepwalked before or after this. He was gone for maybe 30 seconds before I worked up the courage to look outside since my window overlooked the street. On the street outside my house, I saw what looked like a hazy figure, almost as if the space it occupied was distorted, like the figure itself was blurry. It stood there for a while. I couldn't make out any eyes or defined features. It wasn't shaped like my brother, and I'm positive it wasn't him. I was terrified and rushed back to my bed. Naturally, I threw the blankets over my head and had to force myself to slow my breathing. I tried to convince myself that I was simply seeing things, but I could not shake the feeling. Eventually, I calmed down until I heard the door open. Once again, terrified, I breathe a sigh of relief as I see my brother walk in, staring blankly at the wall behind his bed as he walked. Again, I continued to ask what was wrong, but he ignored my questions and almost immediately fell back asleep. I didn't end up sleeping for the rest of the night. When I woke up the next morning, I asked him about it. He didn't remember anything. I was incredibly unsettled, and I told my parents about what I had seen. They brushed it off, but I never did. More than 10 years later, I'm still much more open to the possibility of others' paranormal accounts. If anyone has any idea about what happened, please let me know. We moved maybe 6 months later, and I never ended up having any other intense experiences afterward, although the more minor things like cold spots and sounds continued. Have a paranormal experience of your own? Share it with us at officialphantom.mike@gmail.com. Whether in text or voice recording, we want to hear your story. Thank you for tuning in to Phantom Mike, and remember, if you still feel alone, you weren't listening closely enough.